All right, guys, so we are going to finish up the language portion of the cognition unit. We've done thinking, we've done part of language in class, but since we did not have enough time to get to it, we are going to finish it up via screencast. So we went up to phonemes and morphemes in class today. So we're going to start with grammar and syntax. So the big difference between grammar and syntax, when you think about grammar, you think about what you learn in English class, which is exactly right. It's how you start to learn foreign language. It's the basis of every language. It's a system of rules that enables us to communicate with and understand others. And like I've mentioned in class a few times during this unit, English is one of the hardest languages to learn. It's a language of exceptions. For example, when you put ed on the end of a word, when you're teaching someone who's learning English how to put something in the past tense, you usually say, okay, you put ed on the end of a word, it means past tense. So if you want to say, I went to the mall, their first instinct would be, I go to the mall, because that's the grammatical rule, but unfortunately it's an exception. So it's difficult for people to learn English because it's difficult to understand how you go from go to went in making that past tense. So that's grammar. Syntax is a step above grammar. So it's the rules that are used to order words into grammatically sensible sentences. So the syntax is the order of them. Grammar is the rules, syntax is the order. An example is in English, I don't know why some people are funny. Not, I don't know why some people funny are. So are is the verb here, or I'm sorry, not the verb, the word here that is changing the sentence. It's the word that's going to basically say what the sentence is going to be. So in German, if you had are, if you were trying to say, I don't know why some people are funny, you would put that at the very end of the sentence, not like we do in English where we have to throw it in the middle. So grammar is the rule, syntax is the order. Now we go into semantics, and semantics is where the psychology of it comes in, because semantics is the set of rules we use to derive meaning. For morphemes, words, and sentences, you will recognize semantics because we just got done with memory. Semantic memory is making a memory that is meaningful. It's the exact same in language. So semantics is how we derive meaning from all of the different components we've been talking about of language: morphemes, words, phonemes, sentences. So the dictionary definition and the connotation are two very different things. The denotation, which is the dictionary definition, is exactly, what you would look up in the dictionary and see what the word means. Now the connotation is the meaning of the word in the sentence, okay, or the meaning that we attribute to a word in our culture. And it's going to vary across time and across culture. So I gave you two examples here. The first one is the word gay. 70 years ago, when you said gay, you usually meant how somebody was feeling. If they were feeling gay, they were feeling happy. Today, it's not necessarily ever, I don't think I've heard it in a very long time, the word gay used to express a feeling. It's usually used to express someone's sexuality. So that's how a word's connotation. So even though it's going to have the same dictionary definition, the connotation is going to change throughout time. Now, cultures, it varies as well. So the word boot. If we think about the word boot in English, we can think about two things, actually. One, like a cowboy boot. I went to Oklahoma for my first years of undergrad. You saw cowboy boots everywhere, versus the boot that I was more used to living in a city, which was the boot that you get put on your car if you have too many traffic violations. They put a boot on your car and you have to call someone and pay money before you can actually get it removed. Now, in England, when someone says they're going to look for their boots, it actually means they're looking for their soccer cleats. Or it can also mean the trunk of a car. So if they say, go get something from my boot, it means I'm going to go get something from the trunk of my car, not I'm going to, take out my cowboy boot and reach inside. So the word boot, I just gave you four different meanings, two in American English and two in UK. All right, so connotation, semantics changes across time and culture. And this slide is just kind of showing you the structure of language. We have trillions of sentences in the English language, hundreds of thousands of words, 100,000 morphemes, 40 phonemes, and all of those are represented by a combination of 26 letters. So we went from a trillion to 26 pretty quickly. So now we're going to talk about how language is acquired. And when I talk about this, I want you guys to think about the Genie documentary that I was showing you, The Wild Child, the girl who was found at 13 and she couldn't talk. And there are two big views in language acquisition, and that is what they were trying to figure out through Genie. The first view is by our boy B.F. Skinner. If you don't remember where he's from, we have talked about him. I hope you do remember. We have a cumulative test coming up. B.F. Skinner was in the learning and behavioral unit. He was the guy that made the Skinner box and put mice in there, and he would reward them every time they pressed the lever with food, called positive reinforcement. So he spearheaded positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, and punishment. We talked about those for a while. And he also had something to say about language too. Skinner said that language was a result of learning. So the reason people could speak and could acquire language was through learning. So through association, linking certain words and sounds with certain people. So you see your mom, you know that you learn that the word mom and the sound mom goes with the woman who takes care of you. Also imitation. When I was younger, my mom will hate me for telling the story, but she was driving through pretty bad traffic in downtown Pittsburgh, and she swore. And a couple seconds later, I was eating M&Ms in the back seat and dropped one of my M&Ms and repeated that swear word. So that was actually one of my first words, which might not surprise anyone. But imitation. So kids imitate the language that they hear, also through rewards and punishment. If you say something and you are rewarded for saying that, you're going to say it over and over and over again. So Skinner is the behavioral perspective. So when someone says the behavioral perspective of language, you think to Skinner. All right. So that was one side of language acquisition. So when people found Genie, some psychologists said there's no way she doesn't have enough life experience to actually learn and to imitate and associate language. Now, Noam Chomsky, who is actually still alive today, which Chomsky is a pretty great name, especially if we're talking about language. He argued against Skinner. He said that children have a predisposition to learn language. And a predisposition is they're basically born with the ability to learn language. And he believed it was because of this thing that we all have in our brains called a language acquisition device. And you can literally think about it like a little switch box. So a person's brain is hardwired to learn vocabulary and rules of grammar. So we are born with the ability, this little switch, to learn language and grammar. So the other side of people, when they found Genie, were saying, okay, no, even though she's 13 and has been, neglected and abused in an extreme way, we just need to switch on her LED, her language acquisition device, and we can figure it out. So nature versus nurture. So Chomsky would be the more nature perspective. Nature, genetics. We are all genetically programmed to be able to learn language. Versus Skinner, who would be more the nurture, behavioral. We need to be nurtured to learn a language. Excuse me. And Chomsky's is referred to as the nativist perspective. So Skinner is looked at as the behavioral perspective. Noam Chomsky, you can look at the N, and the N is looked at as the nativist perspective, like native. We are natively, innately able to learn a language. So the combo of the both of them, we combine nature versus nurture, which is what we normally do in psychology, as you've probably seen. Everyone argues one side, nature or nurture, and in the end we realize it's a healthy combination of both. So the social interactivist perspective is just that for language acquisition. It's people who heard Skinner's side and they heard Chomsky's side, and they said, okay, it's not one or the other, it's a good combination of both. Language development is a combo of three big things. First, biological maturity and neural development. So kids, it's told time and time again, kids need to be learned to. They need to be read to. They need to hear words and different vocabulary words, and the more words they hear, the wider their vocabulary and knowledge will expand to. Next is the cognitive development portion. That is where we look at different, mental disabilities, learning disabilities, how that might inhibit some people from learning language in a certain way. And finally, the linguistic environment. So instructions and reinforcement. What are kids exposed to every day? Are they put in an environment where they hear certain language? What kind of language? What words are they growing up with? Are they being forced to read? Are they being tutored? Are they hearing bad words a lot? All of this has, a combination. We've got the biological aspect and the social aspect. Those together come up with language acquisition perspective, social interactivist perspective. So now we go to the language stages. First, there's a slide for each of these. The first stage is babbling. It's little kids starting around age 4 months. They'll spontaneously babble different phonemes. Now, they won't make any sense, but what's really cool is babies are all born with the ability to babble phonemes of all languages from all around the world. But when they start hitting about 1 year of age, they're going to just stick to the phonemes of their native tongue, so the ones that they hear over and over again. If you want to, I linked the PowerPoint to Blackboard. If you want to click on this link, it's just two adorable little twins babbling back and forth to each other. The next stage in language development is a one-word stage. Child uses one word to convey a complete thought or idea. So if, a child's thirsty, they might say bottle instead of I want that bottle, please. Or dog if they want their dog to come to them. So one word to say a whole thought or idea. Second stage, as you would assume, is two-word stage. They're going to use two-word sentences to show basically the appreciation of the rules of grammar. So they're going to start to begin to understand the rules of grammar. And that is also referred to as telegraphic speech. So an example of this could be want bottle, where mom, etc., etc. So they're starting to understand. They're going to say want bottle, not I want my bottle. But they're going to start to understand the rules of grammar. Now, overgeneralization is a trap that some kids fall into. It's when they generalize grammar rules so that they apply way too broadly. So it's when kids really start to understand and hear grammar rules, but they're using them incorrectly. For example, I dug in the sandbox rather than I dug in the sandbox. This is another example of a slide. It says, Grandpa, yesterday I helped Mommy broom the floor. Then we goed to the toy store. It's got that goat in there again. They're saying I helped Mommy broom the floor, which would make sense to the kid because it's called a broom. So why do we say sweep? It's, again, English language is kind of crazy. Why is a parkway called a parkway when we're driving on it? Why is a driveway called a parkway when we park in it? There's a lot of good things to think about there that we don't have time for. So now the final step is we put thinking and language together. There's a reason I teach these both together. It's because they influence each other so heavily. And the big hypothesis here is called the linguistic relativity hypothesis. And in this hypothesis, it states that one's language determines the way a person thinks. And cultural differences are evident in different languages. And this was proposed by Benjamin Whorf in the late 1800s, early 1900s was when this was pretty big. And it makes sense if you look at different cultures. So if you look at the Spanish culture and the Spanish language is much more fluid. And so, frankly, is the Spanish culture. They take a siesta in the afternoon. And if you put that in opposition to, for example, the German language is extremely, extremely rigid. They have a set number of rules for the amount of adjectives you can have in a sentence. And the culture of Germany, as we've learned in history class and still today, is very, very strict. When a train is supposed to come at 12:02, it's going to pull into the station at 12:02, not 12:05, not 11:58. It's going to be there on time. So this is the whole idea behind the linguistic relativity hypothesis. Our language determines the way a person thinks. So the language we're exposed to is going to change the way we think. The example I also put is use of the inclusive language, they instead of just he. That's not always understood to be all-encompassing in certain languages. So it depends on the culture that you're in. All right? So that is it for today, guys. We are going to do intelligence later. There will be another link for that, and I will see you in class.